receptor sites in the brain. There's a part of the brain that actually processes this. It's called the hippocampus. The hippocampus. When the hippocampus is stimulated, we see farce fields and laugh at invisible jokes. Very, very interesting times. Now, I've been asked not to do any controversial political material today. So, you've been a wonderful audience. Goodbye. No, I'm just kidding about that. Really, because we have this is important because we have a deeply divided body politic in this country. Half the people believe our system is broken. The other half believe that it's fixed. We've been divided into two political tribes, the red tribe Republicans, blue tribe Democrats, who spend all of their energy arguing about whether it is worse to kill the born or the unborn. Meanwhile, the Commonwealth has been stolen by a very, very, very small percentage of the uncommonly wealthy, and the bill has been sent to the not yet born. So what we need right now in these challenging times is an evolutionary upwising, where we wake up and wise up. We wake up to the illusion of separation. We wise up to the power of love. Because as you know, love is more powerful than fear. Otherwise, we'd be singing, all you need is fear. She fears you, yeah. No, we're not singing that, and that is a very good thing. And so what we need to do is we need to heal the body politic. We need to bring left and right, front and center, to face the music and dance together, to turn the funk into function and leave the junk at the junction. We need to bring red tribe and blue tribe together in sacred circle to sit and talk until they're purple in the face. Because only by being united as one purple people will the peeps outnumber the perps. And the only way, remember, to overcome corporate personhood is by purple peoplehood. The way to overgrow Big Brother, by bigger brotherhood, sisterhood, and all love one anotherhood. That is the way that we heal the hood in this situation. Now, you understand that this is really a spiritual conversation. Beyond all the politics and economics and sociology, there is a spiritual condition. And it's very, very important to have spiritual practice in these times. I wonder how many people are practicing some form of mindfulness, because we are inundated with so much information that our skeptic system is overflowing. Our mind is filled with information. We need to have mindfulness to empty the mind. Very important. So I spent a week at a silent retreat not too long ago. It was powerful. It was so quiet, you could hear an opinion drop. And I went, of course, to a great mindfulness teacher who told me the way to achieve mindfulness and inner peace, you have to clear your mind of all thoughts. And then you have to focus on the center of yourself. I did it, and it absolutely worked. I am now thoughtless and self-centered. And of course, I have my power animal and spirit guide with me today, Bullwinkle. And I'll tell you why. Because no matter what your problem is, if you channel Bullwinkle to tell people your problems, it sounds funnier. Okay, so let's say you've been locked down, you have no income, you have no job, you've lost your money. Channel Bullwinkle. You've lost my job and I have no money. You see, that's a little funnier. And so I am wearing my Musafix today. Can you see this? Musafix. This is my spirit guide power animal symbol. And to be serious about this, Jesus asked me, he came to me in a dream and he asked me to wear this. I said, why? What does it mean? He said, it means, for Christ's sake, lighten up. Because the world is in serious condition, largely because of our conditioning to be serious. Very, very important. And so it's very important that we recognize that one thing that we can do, no matter what is happening out there in the outer world, we can create inner peace inside by laughing, by using what I call cosmic comic consciousness. So when we allow ourselves to laugh at the situation out there, we create healing inside of us. And often what happens is that there is an aha in the wake of the ha-ha. And then there is an ah when hearty laughter takes us out of our mind and puts us in our heart. Because in the head, we have beliefs that keep us separate, and what people believe is totally unbelievable. So laughter helps us leave the static of the head for the ecstatic of the heart. The more we expand our hearts, the less we will need to shrink our heads. Now, we've probably all heard about that, the whole idea that laughter is healing. And you probably heard the story about Norman Cousins, who was a well-known writer back in the 1970s. He was diagnosed with a life-threatening illness. And he checked into a hotel room with Marx Brothers movies and candid camera reruns, and he got well. And when he cured himself, the medical establishment decided they are going to study the healing power of laughter. Which is kind of like, well, it works in practice, but does it work in theory? And what they found is that when we laugh, the body creates these hormones called endorphins, which are natural painkillers. Laughing improves immune function. Laughter lowers the blood pressure. Because when we laugh, it causes our blood vessels to dilate. Better than having them die early. I want mine to die as late as possible. And then something else I discovered, laughing actually burns calories. Did you know that? So I'm starting a new program. I hope you all enjoy it. It's called Laugh Your Ass Off. Should be very, very popular. You lose weight and you lose weightiness at the same time. Now, on the more serious side, people ask me, Swami, will there ever be peace on earth? And I have great news. There will be peace on earth. I certainly hope we humans are around to enjoy it, though, eh? Because we have been living for the last 5,000 years under the rule of the lowest common denominator. And the golden rule has been overruled by the rule of gold. The rule of gold rule is do unto others before they can do unto you. Needless to say, this has left us with a lot of residue. And so right now, the challenge facing our entire species, the question is, can we undo the doo-doo that has been done? Or will the done doo-doo be our undoing? Okay? And so what we're coming to recognize is that each of us brings a little piece of the piece. And we have to metabolize all of this toxicity inside of ourselves. And we have to take all of that anger and rage and all of that and channel it into something helpful. So I have created a new technique. I call it tantrum yoga. Tantrum yoga, that is where you use your anger to heat your home in the wintertime. Tantrum yoga is where you hold your breath until God gives you what you want. That is how Krishna turned blue. I don't know if you know that. Gonna be blue, Krishna without you. Blue, Krishna without you. I'm sorry. I'm wearing the jacket I got at the Elvis convention. Elvis comes out from time to time. Now, did you know there's an Elvis religion? Presbyterianism. It's one of those new light religions. Same satisfying flavor, 1/3 the commandments. Because Elvis has only 3 things of us. Love me tender, please surrender, return to sender. I was so impressed, I became an Elvis's witness. Yes, every Saturday, we go door to door proselytizing. We'd ring the doorbell, they'd open the door, we'd say, "Are you lonesome tonight?" And people go right to Graceland just from that. It's very, very, very important that we learn to process these things inside. And one of the secrets to being peaceful is to be positive. Be positive. I have a new program, I call it Just Say No to Negativity. Negativity, positively not. And then the other thing, this is a practice I'm hoping that people adopt. It is a challenging practice, but transformational. Whatever it is that happens in your life, bless it. Bless that thing. A driver cuts you off, bless that driver. Bless you. Bless you too. Go bless yourself. I'm telling you, this works. Absolutely. I tried it the other day, and the other driver actually gave me half of a peace sign. Very important, very powerful. So as we're coming to understand that this is a spiritual conversation that we are in, the spiritual conversation, And instead of listening to the news out there, which is not very new at all, there's a lot of olds, right? Instead of focusing on the little screen or the big screen, instead of doing all of that and having your consciousness being pulled out into the world, what we want to do is we want to take the power back to ourselves. If you don't like the current programming, turn off your TV and tell a vision instead. That's where I tell a vision to you and you tell a vision to me. And we have healing and functional visions to step into. And that certainly beats what we've been stepping into, huh? And so I will begin. I will tell my vision. Imagine think tanks where they think about more than tanks. Tanks, but no thanks. Imagine young people living for their country instead of dying for it. Now I'm going to stretch your imagination. Are you ready? Imagine going to the voting booth and voting for the greater of two goods. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Swami, you're proposing a sane world. You must be crazy. But actually, there is no need to change the world. All we need to do is toilet train the world, and we'll never have to change it again. Because our species has left a pretty messy diaper, haven't we? And now we're in that transition. We are transitioning from children of God to adults of good. And we're going through this awkward phase that we call adult essence, because our essence has been addled by toxic beliefs and fear. And so in this time of great uprising, I want to offer this one more vision. I call it non-judgment day. On non-judgment day, everybody will win a beauty contest. On non-judgment day, all of the lawyers will disappear. We won't need them. Our trials will be over. They can go have fun and play golf and everything. On non-judgment day, all of the nations at the United Nations will begin their session with a hokey pokey. Imagine. The Israelis and the Palestinians, they put their whole selves in. That is commitment. They pull their whole selves out. That is transformation. They turn themselves around. That's transformation. And that's what it's all about. Okay, now I know from this group, you already have created your own sane asylum in these crazy times. And I could feel the spiritual enlightenment. I can actually see some of your auras. And a few of you have recently had orgasm, so your auras are quite a bit brighter. And recognizing your spiritual wisdom, you recognize, of course, that each of us already has all of the answers within. It's matching them with the corresponding questions that is the challenge. And so in this part of the program, if any of you have an answerable question, the Swami will have a questionable answer for you. Something been puzzling you? Ask the Swami and have it puzzle both of us, okay? So I'm going to ask Damien if there's anybody out there who has a question. I mean, don't be afraid to be foolish. After all, look at me. I've got bullwinkle around my neck. So any questions?
All right, everybody, this next portion of what we're going to do is we're going to try to stump the Swami. So we're going to fire questions at him so that we can get a little bit more ridiculous and a little bit more fired up about moving forward with positivity. Swami, I'll kick it off. When did you find that you became one with this Swaminess of yours? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'll tell you something. There was this moment, I tried so many spiritual paths, I was pathological. And no, really, I expanded my mind so much I couldn't fit through my door. I had to go to a shrink. I was addicted to spirit. I was hitting the source pretty hard in those days. And they say you have to hit bottom. And I hit bottom in my spiritual quest. I woke up one morning in a strange biker crash pad. And everything smelled like incense. I looked around me, and the bikers had these orange leather vests and funny ponytails. I went, oh my God, I've become a Harley Krishna. And at that moment, I achieved full realization. I realized I'm a fool, and there's nothing to do but laugh. And so since that time, I have been practicing fundamentalism with the accent on the fun, not to be confused with fundamentalism, accent on the mental. See, the fundamentalists say heaven is up there. The fundamentalists say heaven is where we make it. So why don't we go for heaven on earth just for the hell of it? Because we are not here to earn God's love. We're here to spend it. And of course, as a fundamentalist, I believe that life is a joke, but God is laughing with us, not at us.
Pamela?
Hi, Swami. Hi.
Hello.
I hear you do a lot of play on words. And how can I say this? Let's see. I belong to Toastmasters. One is English, one is bilingual. Tonight I'm going to do my first speech in French. And I chose a path which is humor. And I live in France and I do language exchanges, English, French, French, English. I'll do very fast with 3 people. And I have had them attempt to translate into French my English humor. And it has been a total disaster. And then I spoke with somebody who's really brilliant about all this. And she even said it's close to impossible to write words, to move words from one language, humor, to the other language in humor. You do an enormous amount of play on words, which it's almost the most difficult thing to translate. And then also there's references, American references that the French have and the French and vice versa. I have concluded, what do you think, Swami? Do you agree with me that to translate written humor from one language to another is impossible without mime, without Charlie Chaplin, without total movement and facial expressions with the stupid words?
You're absolutely right. And, first of all, what I get is, obviously, if you're in France and you're doing Toastmasters, your group is obviously French Toastmasters, right?
This particular group is the only in Paris, the only bilingual. It's bilingual.
But it's not French toast. You can do a French Toastmaster. You see, you can be a master of French toast.
You see, there you go with the play of words. I could sort of follow you, but what are you going to do that into French?
I'll tell you a story. Let me tell you the story. I was in Europe a number of years ago, and I met a woman who was a translator, an interpreter, and she agreed with you that the hardest thing to translate is humor. So she told me a story. She was translating a speech that a man was giving. He told a joke. She translated it, and everybody laughed. He was very impressed. He came up to her after the program. He said, I know how difficult it is to translate humor. How did you translate my joke? She said, oh, I just said, it's a joke, laugh. So there you have it.
Swami, you're about the only person who can make me laugh out loud constantly. I've been in hysterics here. You're just amazing. And when I called you on the phone to invite you to come and speak to us online, you made a joke right there. I mean, it was just, do you just live in a space where you look every second for the humor in life?
Well, the thing is that I have achieved full realization. It is really always, it's a practice. It's a practice. And all you're doing is you're asking yourself, you're noticing, you're seeing on different levels. You ever wonder why a joke happens in 3s? A minister, a priest, and a rabbi, right? Why is it always 3s? And I'll tell you. For example, minister, priest, and a rabbi, they are discussing their legacy. How do they want to be remembered? What do they want the eulogist to be saying when they're in their casket at the funeral? And the minister said, I want them to be saying he was a family man and a pillar of his community. The priest said, I want them to be saying he was a holy man and a leader of his flock. The rabbi says, I want them to be saying, look, I think he's breathing, you see. So what humor does is it upsets the premise. See, we live in a world of dueling dualities. It's this or that, right? But when you add the third element, you disrupt the dueling dualities and you point us to a third way. And so when you disrupt the linear mind, all of a sudden there is a space. And I said this earlier, there's a aha in the midst of the ha-ha. And so all you need to do is you need to learn to begin to hear and see funny. And by the way, my cohort, Steve Bhaerman, is teaching a self-paced course called Wake Up Laughing and Leave Laughter in Your Wake. And one of the things that we teach, which is teachable, how to see funny. Now, you know my partner, Trudy, right? She did not grow up around a lot of humor, but because she's been surrounded by it, she's been immersed in this humor, she has learned to do this and to hear and see funny. So check this out. We're back on the East Coast. We've had dinner with my brother and sister-in-law, and we come back and we're staying with my cousin, and he asked her a very innocent question. What did you have for dinner? And Trudy said, we had duck. And my cousin said, how did they prepare the duck? And Trudy and I look at each other and we go, you know, you just can't prepare a duck for something like that. So the way to think funny and see funny is to begin to allow different layers of meaning to come in when you hear and see. So I have studied with the great Fu Ling masters. Growing up in New York, I have a black belt and borscht belt. And so that's why I'm able to do this. So I think we have time for another question, don't we?
Well, I just want to know, where is Trudy?
Where is
Those of us who have been around a while remember her very well.
Well, you know, she's actually up and about doing all sorts of things to keep. Coda, I want to invite her to put her face in here. I want Trudy to put your face in. You've been called.
I've been called. Hey, how are you all?
That's right. And this is my inspiration. This is my muse, because if you want to be amusing, you have to have a muse to help you amuse other people. This is my amuse.
Good to see you, Trudy. Do you amuse through music?
Well, yes, in fact, we do amuse through music. Do I have time to share a musical number with you? A little bit of time? I don't know if anybody out there in this group could use some healing, especially in these times. Where sometimes stress creates some physical difficulties, doesn't it? And so in order to provide a healing for all of you people, I am going to channel the late, great Bobby Darin. Okay, and he is going to provide a healing message for all of you. Somewhere beyond disease, somewhere bodies are free, someday we'll fly forever high, and never again bodies fail. And somewhere beyond disease, high above low frequency, together we'll play on non-judgment day, and never again I'll go ailing. It's far beyond the stars, it's here right where we are. I know beyond the doubt, it's out beyond karma. We'll greet all other souls. Behold that we are whole. Happy we'll be beyond disease, and never again bodies failing. No more ailing, no more ailing, just soul sailing beyond disease, beyond disease, beyond disease. Thank you.
I'm going to unmute everybody. Let's everybody give him a big clap and a hoot and holler.
Steve.
Thank you. Namaste. Namaste. Namaste and namaste go. Goodbye.
Okay, for maybe just a couple more questions. Oh, Steve's muted.
Oh, I am in.
Unmute. There you go.
I have a question.
Okay.
All right, this is Brooke. I'm gonna go ahead here. Swami, are there any subjects that are so serious that one should never be humorous or joke about them?
I'll tell you something. I am a humor libertarian. I believe that any joke between consenting adults is appropriate, and it's always appropriate to make loving laughter about yourself, self-facing laughter. Even in the most dire of circumstances, this is very important. If you voluntarily choose to laugh, you become bigger than your problem, because levity allows you to rise above whatever has been bringing you down. If you read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, he talks about being in a Nazi death camp during World War II. He and a fellow inmate made a pact that each day they would find something to laugh about. Because again, that was a way for them to keep their spiritual bubble around them. And to give you an idea about how powerful this is, one of the jokes that actually circulated in the camps was about these two Jewish guys who decided they are going to assassinate Hitler. And you know, Hitler's motorcade comes at this one intersection every morning at 11. They're waiting for him. 11 in the morning, he doesn't show up. 11:15, 11:30. When he's not there by 11:45, one of the assassins turns to the other and says, "Gee, I hope nothing has happened to him." So when we voluntarily choose to laugh at whatever our condition is, the new word, you'll excuse me, situation, when we laugh at whatever the situation is, then we bring the power of love and laughter into our lives, and we radiate that out and inspire other people. Okay? Any more questions?
I've got one for you. How can we use humor as one of the evolutionary tools to move forward through this drama that we're currently going through?
Very, very excellent question. Now, as I said earlier, jokes come in threes. And this transition, this emerging evolution, is leaving the world of dueling dualities and creating a sense of unity. Now, because comedy gives us a third way, to look at something, it already bursts us out of the dueling dualities. I'll give you another example. I was once giving a presentation, I think it was right there in where you are in Orange County, as I remember the background was orange. I was right there. It was at a health conference, and I was talking about a condition that we suffer from, that we're still suffering from, called irony deficiency. That's a lack of sense of humor. Irony deficiency. Now, seeing a doctor won't help, but seeing a paradox will. So I offered an irony supplement for people to munch on if they want to pump ironies. And the one example I gave was people who call themselves pro-life, but somehow are in favor of the death penalty. Woman comes up to me afterward, and she was very upset because she was obviously pro-life and thought that I was making fun of her. She was very angry at me. I told her a story. Now, she didn't know I was telling her a story, but I told her a story. I said, you know, I was watching a TV show where there were 3 spiritual teachers talking about when life begins. And the priest said, life begins at conception. And the woman is shaking her head, yes, that's what I believe. And the minister said, life begins when the baby takes the first breath. And she's shaking her head, no. And then the host said, Rabbi, when does life begin? And the rabbi said, life begins when the children leave home and the dog dies. The woman burst out laughing, and she hugged me. Because through the power of laughter, we collapse the dueling dualities, and we get to evolve to a higher level where we recognize we're all one with the same one, the universal oneness. And that the universe has us surrounded, might as well surrender.
Well, Swami, I can see that you have turned duality into triage for these current times.
That's good. That's very, very good. That's a good try. A good try.
I'll work on it.
And yeah, but it's going to be triumph, you see, without all that umphing. Using humor allows you to triumph without all the umphing and trying. Because it's a natural flow of things. Anything else? Any other questions? Whoop, I'm not hearing. I hear somebody's trying to call.
Swami, can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes, I hear.
Hear you. I got to tell you, every Saturday I have a conversation with my brother in Oklahoma City, and he is the fundamental of the fundamentals. And I sometimes find myself really burdened by his conversation. But I wonder, what do you have to say for these? I mean, you mentioned fundamentalism, which I love your definition. Any advice for me?
Well, the first thing is you want to keep your sense of humor, because what happens is if you're able to keep your sense of humor and keep it and perspective, then you're not impacted by what's happening out there. There's a lot of toxic beliefs out there. Holding a sense of humor will keep you from taking it poisonally. Now, it so happens that many years ago, I lived in Texas. We lived in a little town in the hill country. In fact, I was a sacred cow poke in those days, believe it or not. When you poke a sacred cow, well, that's a whole other story. But in this town was mostly Baptist people. And so whenever we went to the post office, we had to have with us a Baptist appropriate joke. And that became the currency of bringing us together. And it was very important to have a joke that everybody can understand that offends nobody. There's plenty of these jokes. If you look at if you go to my website, by the way, wakeuplaughing.com, and you go to join our mailing list, you'll get a free book called The Zen Koans of Harry Cohen Baba, which has 43 of the funniest jokes ever created, and it helps you learn how to tell these jokes. So if you learn how to tell a joke, and you begin with a joke that you know that your brother-in-law is going to laugh at, that becomes the currency of the heart. When you come together at the heart, the beliefs that separate us in our heads become less important. They go into the background. The heart goes into the foreground. There's a story I want to share with you that happened a few years ago, and perhaps you can bring this up with anybody who you share where you don't believe the same thing. You may remember that there was out in Florida and on the near Pensacola, there was some family that was stuck in the riptide and they were about to drown. And the people on the beach made a human chain. They made a human chain to bring these people to safety. I guarantee that while these people were making this human chain, they weren't saying, hey, are you a Democrat or a Republican? Are you a conservative or a progressive? What's your religious belief? No. Instead of the tug of war that we tend to have, that the separating mind gives us, this was a tug of peace, where all people were pulling together in the same direction. So rather than trying to fight what we don't like, what we want to do is we want to bring people, draw people toward a common goal, common solution. What is it that we all want together? And that unifying idea makes our separation move into the background without denying the separation. It just puts our connection in the foreground.
Okay, Mr. Swami, I think we have enough time for maybe one more question if somebody else has something to ask.
I still have an answer left. I hope they asked the question.
I have a question.
Yes, yes.
How can you wake up laughter?
This is very, very important. You know, they say that the average child laughs 150 times a day, and the average adult laughs maybe not that much, right? So do the math and do the aftermath. If we put ourselves in a childlike state and begin to notice things that delight us, we might find ourselves smiling. One of my prescriptions is to laugh in your own face lovingly. When you wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, and if that doesn't make you laugh, looking at yourself in the morning, pretend that you're looking at somebody else. And just begin the process of laughing. And if you can't laugh, smile. I'll tell you why. Because when you do this, This is called the levitational pull. The forces of levity. While gravity is trying to bring you down, the forces of levity lifting your corners of your mouth up in a smile. And what happens is your actual physiology changes when you do that. You actually begin to bring these positive, healing, happy hormones into your system. Your body thinks you're happy, and then you become happier.
All right, I think now we're going to get into the second part of our interview or our presentation. Now we're going to be speaking with Steve Bhaerman. This is Swami's alter ego. In addition to being a funny guy in his own right, he's also authored a serious book with cellular biologist Bruce Lipton. The book is called Spontaneous Evolution, Our Positive Future and a Way to Get There from Here. It's been translated into 26 different languages and has been called World Changing by Deepak Chopra and political commentator Tom Hartman. So I have a confession. And Steve knows this already, but I have a very big personal interest in this particular book. I had a chance actually to see Mr. Bruce Lipton speak on the book. And then as fates would have it, I am here interviewing the co-author of the book, Mr. Steve Bhaerman. So Steve, I'm blown away by your book. I shared that with you last night. I just have a few questions regarding kind of this work that you put forth. Just a little background. Bruce Lipton wrote The Biology of Belief. And for those of you that have read it, it's just an incredible, incredible perspective on how he views, well, cellular biology and the world in general. And I really think that merging science and spirituality is going to be the answer to how we're going to move forward. And Steve, you use laughter in such a profound way. Mother Earth is suffering from a bad case of humans right now, as you mentioned. I think we're really, it's an issue of mindfulness. How can we change the ways that we are living and focus on mindfulness to help us navigate our way out of what we're currently dealing with?
Well, first of all, we're in a situation that we're in, you know, these have been called apocalyptic times. And the definition of apocalypse means the lifting of the veils. So what's happening is that the veils are being lifted on all of these things that have been happening undercover. And people are upset about it because, like any disease process, the disease has to come to the surface. So I look at our current president as America's balloon karma payment, that all of the things that have been under the surface bubbling, all of this toxicity is now on the surface of things. And so that people can really see what it is and begin to heal. As you suggested, Damien, the beginning of the healing process is right here in our hearts. We are a very, very mental civilization and have been so for thousands of years. And what's happened is that there's been a distortion of masculine and feminine, that instead of working together as dynamic duo dance partners, they've been separated into two separate camps. And so part of this integration and integrity that needs to happen is the beginning of these integration of the two parts in ourselves and beginning to put the heart first and recognize that the mind and structure is the servant of the heart. This is really unusual because right now we're looking at a medical system. For example, the current medical crisis is being dealt with purely on a materialistic basis. And if we look at where this so-called artificial intelligence wants to take us, it wants to take us to where we all have chips implanted and where we all vaccinated in a mandatory way. And so it's the triumph of the material world, material medicine, that fails to recognize that that there is a world that exists, a true reality that's beyond matter. So we need to cultivate that connection with whatever we call it, that divine spirit, whether we call it God, whether we call it the one spirit, whether we call it the great mystery, whatever we call it, it's that thing that is beyond words. Once we begin to cultivate that individually, we can let that shine out and begin to recognize other people. That's what this great uprising is about. We need a lot of love and a lot of light to metabolize the toxicity that's coming up right now that needs to come up in order to be healed.
Or let's see. we're currently, as you put it so eloquently, in a pretty intense situation, and we are currently going through an evolutionary uprising. You and Bruce write about this concept called epigenetics. So for those of you in the meeting here that aren't familiar with what epigenetics are, it's basically saying that there's something that predetermines your genetics. Bruce talked about how you can actually remove the brain from a cell and it can still function, which kind of seems a little strange. I was wondering, Steve, do you think we've done that with most of our media? Have we removed the brain? Is that why we're not necessarily giving good information to people?
Let me go back and clarify what Bruce discovered. And this is very interesting because it applies to what we're going through right now. Back in 1985, Bruce was teaching at the Medical College, University of Wisconsin. And he did an experiment where they enucleated the cells. They took the nucleus out of the cells. Now, in our biology textbooks that we all were raised with, it said that the nucleus is the brain of the cell. But what Bruce discovered is you could take the nucleus out and the cell continued to function until it needed to reproduce itself, and that's when it failed. What he recognized was that the nucleus is the gonads of the cell, the reproductive material, and the cell membrane is the brain. The cell membrane is the computer chip, right? So he made this great discovery. He goes to the other professors and he tells them about this great discovery that he made that's world changing. And they say, nah, let's forget about that. We'd have to change the textbooks. Okay. So we are at a point right now where part of the uprising is that all of these people who have been practicing energy medicine, who recognize that there is a field that actually governs the particles. This field actually determines what happens in the physical world, and yet we're only focusing on the physical world. It's hard to change beliefs. Our current media right now, which Swami would say is a brainwashing machine stuck on spin, the current media is right now censoring new ideas because they're too threatening to the old order. We have never seen this level of censorship that is so obvious to people. And so the reason why the censorship is happening is to keep change from happening so that the current ways of thinking and the current power structure can stay as it is. So part of the uprising is bringing together people from all different sides to have a conversation so that we determine a likelier story. So in terms of the brain, right now, the new brain of our body politic is being activated in an integrated way. It's the heart brain. It's what we know is true in our hearts. It's the enduring part of what it means to be human. And we need to say the only way we're going to have artificial intelligence is if it's actually overruled by real intelligence, the intelligence of the heart.
And you mentioned this topic called the field. And I kind of want to talk to you a little bit more about that. Can you discuss how our environment affects our thoughts?
Well, first of all, let's go back and look at what the field is. When we were in the sixth grade science teacher did an experiment. He or she put iron filings on a piece of paper. And then when they fell in some random order, and then when a magnet was put underneath the paper, lo and behold, the iron filings would arrange themselves in a pattern. There are, as we have been learning, invisible fields that we haven't yet identified that actually move the particles around. So if you've practiced feng shui, if you've practiced qigong or tai chi, you've recognized that there are actually energy fields that you can build and cultivate. And with tai chi, often if you, or qigong, you can put your hands up like this and look between your hands and you can actually see a field there. You can actually see an energy field that would normally be invisible, but the field is so powerful, the magnetic energy is so strong that you can feel that. So first of all, a field is something that rearranges the particles. Albert Einstein said that the field is a sole governing pattern around the particles. And so much of what our medicine has been, so much of what our politics has been, so much about what our economics and all of these other systems have been, is about trying to push these these little particles around and thinking that we're going to change things. So in changing the field right now, we've been in an invisible field in our political and economic and social situation called the lowest common denominator. Dominate or be dominated. Might makes right. And even if we are peace-loving people, even if we're working for peace and the environment and all these good causes, if we use kinesiology, let's say, muscle testing, and for most of us, if we were tested on the belief, I believe that we can have world peace, doink, we would test weak because of how we've been programmed through our beliefs and perceptions. So the way that we actually change the way things are happening out in the world is begin by changing our beliefs and perceptions. And there's a 4-step process, which is guaranteed to work 3 times faster than 12-step. And the first step is become aware. Become aware that we have about particular beliefs that have governed the way we think. It may be something that happened when we were kids. Maybe something that we learned when we were kids. It may be something that happened in our lives as adults that have caused us to narrow our perceptions about what is possible. The second thing is to acknowledge. We acknowledge that this has happened. And I think this is really very important because in changing anything, in addition to becoming aware of it, you have to acknowledge that that's how it is. Number 3 is acceptance. We have to be able to accept things exactly as they are and exactly as they aren't in order to have an accurate read on where we are right now. You as in you are here. And the 4th step is forgiveness. And forgiveness is really releasing yourself from the prison of being at the effect of something that's happened in the past. My friend, psychologist Carl Buchheit, has a wonderful saying. He says, give up all hope for a better past. Give up all hope for a better past. So there's certain things that cannot be changed, but when we acknowledge them, we accept them exactly as they are and as they aren't, and then we forgive it, we release it. We say, you know, all of the energy that I've put into in holding this thing as real, I am now able to release that, take that energy and make it available for something else. And in the brain, it's interesting, what happens when we forgive is the memory moves from the amygdala, which is where we have all the emotional charge, to the hippocampus, which is where it simply is recorded as, yes, that's something that's happened. It's information without charge, right? So epigenetics means above the cell, above and beyond. And what we're learning is that even though we may be genetically disposed towards something, it takes something in our environment, often an incident, often a belief or perception, to activate that particular genetic expression. So, you've heard of the placebo effect. Isn't it interesting that when people are given sugar pills and told it's a medicine, about 30% of the time or more, they actually have the same effect as if they took the medicine. Because of the way our backward medical system operates, they try to eliminate the placebo effect so that they can prove that this or that drug works. If our medical system was right side up, we'd be going, how can we cultivate the placebo effect? How can we give people the energetic signal to be able to have command over their bodies without the drugs? But of course, we live in a system where that's how money is made. Right now, in this time of great uprising, where we have a very, very profound choice, we are very close to being moved toward a totally mechanistic way of being, where we're locked down from the top down. If we follow the Bill Gates path of mass vaccinations, mandatory mass vaccinations, and controlling people by having chips under their skin, and this may sound like some dystopian fantasy, but it's a dystopian reality that if we allow them to, that's what they're going to do. The only way that that's not going to happen is if we gather the power of the heart, and those of us who have used that power, the power of love and the power of energetic medicine, saying, not so fast, cowboy. We want to have medical choice, and we want to be able to bring these practices that have been kept in protective custody for so long into the field so that we can begin to use those to heal. One particular thing that's really upset me. I spoke with a chiropractor friend a few days ago who said that a colleague of his has healed more than 30 COVID-19 patients using holistic means, including an 85-year-old man who was sent home from the hospital to die. He healed them without any other kind of drug or radical intervention. My question is, how many people have died from this disease because they have not been exposed to these holistic means that have been systematically suppressed now more than ever? So part of the uprising is taking the energy, taking our anger and taking that upset and saying, we're going to take that energy and focus it on a movement forward to break natural medicine through the soundless barrier so that we aren't all made subjects by these well-meaning but very, very distorted individuals like Bill Gates telling us that we have to all be vaccinated with unproven and toxic vaccines. My soapbox.
Oh, okay, so it sounds to me like we have a mindfulness and an awareness problem. And a lot of the book, you guys talk about how your environment develops the culture around you. And as I look around right now with this COVID culture, the only thing that I could see to help us navigate to a better way is a term that you and Bruce use called cultural creatives. And just briefly, it basically explains that these are the type of people that, think differently. How are the people that think creatively in these tense times going to define our future?
What a great idea that you brought this up. We have two incomplete and obsolete paradigms that are duking it out. We have the black-coated priest paradigm that goes back to traditional patriarchal top-down dominate or be dominated religion. We see that in a lot of the religious fundamentalists. We also have the religion that Bruce and I call scientism, which has nothing to do with the scientific method, but has to do with believing the dogma that only the material world is real. And so that is the world that is in charge right now. The cultural creatives are the people who are waking up to say, wait a minute, we need both. The body politic needs two strong wings to fly. We need the conservative approach in certain regards. We need the progressive approach in certain regards. We need to have these working together in an integrated way. And we need to recognize that science and religion are both true in the sense that there is a great spirit, a great mystery, and there are laws of the physical universe. What's been happening is that of all of the points of view, even though there's probably at least 1/3 of Americans now follow this cultural creative belief that we need both, it has been systematically suppressed. So if you watched the presidential debates last summer, you saw that Marianne Williamson was really the only person who brought this up. She brought up the idea of this more holistic view. Why is it that people are getting sick? Rather than how much money should we be spending on healthcare, why is it that people are getting sick? And you could see that she was shut down immediately, that her campaign was trashed. She was called a vaxxer. She was called all kinds of things. And people stopped sending her money. She was eliminated from the debate. So we have to recognize that except through a few little areas like Oprah Winfrey and Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer, and some of these people have been speaking about this for a long time, we have not been allowed to gather a coherent force around this cultural creative idea that integrates the two sides. Evolution is about including and transcending. So we don't deny anything, we include it, but we transcend it to a higher peace and a higher level of organization. And right now, in this COVID crisis, part of the awakening, as people are sheltered in place or locked down, depending on how you want to look at it, many, many people are watching these videos that have been suppressed. And they're asking the questions that haven't been asked. Why are these things being suppressed? What do they not want us to know? What they don't want us to know is the power that we have by coherent love through the power of the heart. Because that power, instead of being dependent on a dominate or be dominated financial system, a dominate or be dominated religious system, basically it's recognizing the God in each of us And in that sense of interdependence, we can become independent, sovereign, soul, S-O-U-L, proprietors of our own lives. And then finally, as adults of God, create a sense of interdependence where we cooperate together. And instead of being worried about homeland security, we create heartland security.
Well, listen, Steve, we appreciate. Hello?
I'd like to make one request, is that we bring them back to talk about this. Steve, I love what you're saying. This is very interesting to me, and I'm sure it'll be interesting to a lot of others. And maybe you could come back and talk about your other book that you did with Dr. Lipton. I think this is fascinating. It's very timely. And there's a lot of us here who would like to hear about it. As Diana said, we're all cultural creatives here. This is a group that self-selects for cultural creativity. And I'd like to hear more about this and help move this dialogue along.
Thank you so much. I would love to be part of that. I'm honored and actually thrilled that this is what people have been hungry for, that they have not been able to get. This great uprising that we're going through.
I would like to thank the Swami and Mr. Steve. Before we go, I would like to kind of mention a few places where you can follow Steve. At this point, on a more serious side, he hosts a radio show on Wiki Politiki, I think.
Wiki Politiki.
Wiki Politiki.
Wiki Politiki. And there's a link. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, well, we're going to go ahead and put the link into the comment section. I'll have Rebecca do that. And what he's doing on this one is just bringing left and right, front and center, to turn the funk into function and to leave the junk at the junction. I would just like to offer a huge thank you to you, Steve, for coming and joining us at the Inside Edge. I really know for a fact that everybody truly values your opinion and your humor in these times because, man, if ever we needed a laugh, now's the time. So I'd really like to thank you with all my heart. And it's been a very special opportunity to be able to host this with you too, because of my special interest in what you do.
I want to step in here and thank Damien. Damien, we want to acknowledge you. Let's all give him a big hand and say you did a great job. You just did a great job.
Man, you were amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I really hope to see you back here. I think everybody's really interested in discussing the book with you a little bit more. Everybody else, you guys have a great Wednesday. It was an honor to be the host today, and see you guys again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Damien.